OnePlus is no stranger to the smartphone game. The very first OnePlus phone came out in 2014 and it was generating massive hype throughout the tech industry. Their motto, never settled, which made a lot more sense back then when the company was selling phones with top of the line specs for a much lower price than their competitors. Over the years, the price has slowly risen, nearly matching their competitors. With their price advantage now gone, is the OnePlus 11 worth your money? Let's talk about it. Let's start with the build. We've got Corning Gorilla Glass Victus on the front, Gorilla Glass 5 on the back of the body. We have the same classic candy bar shaped phone and a curved screen, similar to that of the Pixel 7 Pro in terms of how sharp the curve is, leaving a very thin aluminum rail to hold on to. The volume and power buttons are very clicky and tactile and stick out very nicely. The alert slider has made a welcome return here as well, and the texture on the slider makes it very easy to find without even looking at the phone. On the back of the phone, the rail curves to the back. On the top side, where the camera housing is located, there is a glittery layer on the camera housing which shines when it hits the light just right. The glass on the back of the phone is a fingerprint magnet on the green version, but on the black version, there's matte glass, so it's much easier to hold on to and to avoid fingerprints altogether. The phone is rated IP64 for dust and water resistance, which is just a little bit less than the typical IP67. What that means is this can handle maybe a splash of water, but you shouldn't jump into a pool with it. The phone also has a dual SIM tray for those who need it. You can get the phone in Time Black or Eternal Green with either a configuration of 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage, or 16GB of RAM and 256GB of storage. But do note that the 8GB, 128GB storage model only comes in black. The 8GB RAM, 128GB of storage combo comes in at $699.99, and the 16GB, 256GB storage model, which I have here, comes in at $799.99. The phone feels nice and comfortable in the hand at just 205 grams. I mentioned in the unboxing that the side rails feel a little sharp, similar to that of the Pixel 7 Pro, but this isn't a problem if you're using a case. The display. The OnePlus 11 has a 6.7 LTPO OLED display, 1440p with 120Hz refresh rate and 525 pixels per inch. LTPO means that the refresh rate can change in order to conserve battery life. During those times when you're looking at something that wouldn't benefit from a rapid refresh rate, like reading an ebook or looking at pictures, it can go as high as 120Hz and as low as 1 Hz. We also have an in-display fingerprint scanner here again, and it works well with no issues. Setup was easy and painless. My tip for you is that if you want to register only one finger or two, I would register the same finger twice or more if you can. I only use my index finger and my thumb when unlocking, so I register both those fingers multiple times so that I don't get errors and it works better in my opinion. The display looks great, as it should, since it's manufactured by Samsung. It's bright and beautiful and a joy to look at. Now on to the performance of the phone. On the performance side, the phone is running the latest Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chip. I tested the chip by playing some games, and I tried to find the most intensive games to play. One game I came across was Genshin Impact, so I installed it and gave it a go. It's hard to tell, but it looks pretty smooth in my opinion. And if you do have issues with running games on here, there is a high performance mode in settings, which I also tried, and it looks slightly smoother if anything. The 8 Gen 2 chip did not have any problems handling anything I threw at it. Now, how could you look at the phone and not even wonder about these cameras? Let's talk about these cameras for a little bit. We have the 50 megapixel main camera, a 48 megapixel ultra wide camera, 32 megapixel 2x telephoto lens, and on the front we have a 16 megapixel front selfie shooter. The last OnePlus phone I had was the OnePlus 6, like I mentioned earlier, and I didn't really like the quality of the photos the phone produced. I'm more impressed this time around though, as the OnePlus 11 takes very good photos in my opinion, although they might look pretty plain to someone who's used to using different cameras on different smartphone manufacturers with very good computational photography. I like the photos here due to the accuracy. With other phones, you can see processing happening, which makes the photos look better than real life. I feel like the OnePlus 11 takes pretty accurate colors. And as someone who isn't a fan of very heavy photo editing, I think these look pretty great. The Hasselblad partnership is paying off a little bit, but there's always room for improvement. Of course, photos and videos are more likely to fall apart in low light, as most phones would do, but these are pretty good for sure. Now we'll talk about the audio a little bit. The speakers on the phone are pretty good. I've had no issues hearing others on the line, nor have they had issues hearing me. They are loud and crispy. Actually, in terms of smartphone speakers, I think these are pretty great actually. I actually prefer how loud these are compared to other phones that I'm using. Okay, so here we have the OnePlus 11 and the Galaxy Fold 4. Let's give it a go.
Will you take part in my life, my love? That is my dream. I think what a dream is what you make it. Always try to give, don't ever take it.
Now, what's a smartphone without its software? The phone is running Oxygen OS 13. The OS is a little cartoony looking, which is fine. It's colorful, and it's not something to complain about unless you really want to be nitpicky. I've always admired OnePlus for the customizations that they allow on their OS. Pixel phones are light on the customization side, and then Samsung phones are heavy on the customization side, and I feel like OnePlus fits nicely in between. I like some of the features here I'm seeing, and I'm seeing a few new features. Well, they're new to me because I haven't used the previous phone, but I like seeing these features like split screen options and the ability to bring up a sidebar, which is pretty cool. I like having the option to do that. Haptic feedback is very nice here. It's strong enough to feel while typing and not too weak. I'm not a fan of weak haptic feedback, and I appreciate it when you can feel it while typing. When games are launched, there are some optimizations that are automatically done on the phone, which is a pretty cool feature. The phone freed up some of the memory, and optimizations turned on to help improve the gaming experience. There have been a few instances where the phone would freeze up or stop responding due to apps I'm using. I've had the Google Photos app freeze on me while uploading photos to Google Photos cloud storage. The phone is still responsive though, and you can still close the app, you can still force close it. But then when I did try it again, it did happen again until I restarted the phone, and that actually fixed it from that point on. Same thing with the Sony imaging app. I would use the imaging app to transfer photos from my camera to this phone via Wi-Fi, and it froze, and I've never seen that app freeze ever. And I use both of these apps, the Google Photo apps and the Sony imaging app. I use it on all my phones, so it's the first time I ever saw that I've ever seen that freeze before. A restart was also necessary, and it fixed the problem, but I've never had this issue on any other phone before. I do have an issue with some of the notifications on this phone, as some apps I don't receive notifications for. There's nothing on the screen. Regardless whether I turn off any power saving options or not, notifications do not appear when I swipe down, but I suppose there's some power management being a little aggressive here in the background. But when I unlock the phone, it's not there. When I swipe down after unlocking, it's not there, but I go to the app and there's the new message. If you're wondering when this phone will die, this is a section for you. The phone is shipped with a 5,000 milliamp battery. I've been getting around 6.5 hours of screen on time on average on full HD plus and high refresh. One time I had 5.5 hours of screen time, but it was over the span of 24 hours. Some days I'll get 7.5 hours. If you want even more battery life, you can definitely change the resolution down to 1080p. But in general, battery life shouldn't be too much of a problem if you're near an outlet, as OnePlus has included their Super Voke charger in the box. OnePlus states that it takes 27 minutes for a full charge. In my testing, the phone went from 0 to 50% in 15 minutes and about a full charge in about 39 minutes. Charging might have been a little faster if the phone didn't turn itself on when it had enough power to boot up. Also important to note that I am located in the United States, and apparently reports have stated that people in the United States only get the 80 watt version of the charger versus the 100 watts the rest of the world is getting. This is most likely due to the difference in voltage as we use in the United States. There are similar reports of this happening with the previous model last year, where people would receive the 65 watt charger instead of the 80 watt charger. Now if you look here in the charger itself, it'll tell you whether you have the 80 watt or the 100 watt charger, and I have the 80 watt here. That being said, you'll most likely have even better charging speeds if you live in a different country and you get the 100-watt charger. Lastly, the phone comes with a USB-C to USB-A cable, and the charging brick also has USB-A port, which differs from last year. You obviously can't mix and match the cables and the blocks from last year's phone, because last year's phone came with a USB-C to C, and then the charging block had a C port on it. Surprisingly, the OnePlus 11 does not have wireless charging, which is surprising because the phone has a glass back, which is pretty much perfect for that. This is not a deal breaker for me, but if you're someone who uses wireless charging a lot, that could be something to consider. What do I think about this phone overall? The OnePlus 11 is a pretty good phone, and it should definitely be considered as an option when you're upgrading. The notification thing bugs me, but if it were to be fixed in the future, or if I find out that it's somehow a user error, then there wouldn't really be any glaring issues that would stop me from using this phone full time. It's a great device, and it's plenty powerful, and it runs very smoothly. It's got the right amount of customization, and the camera is pretty good too, in my opinion. The phone doesn't come with any other sizes, so if you're a small phone person, that should be considered. Overall, this is a solid phone that I could easily recommend to people. Have a good day.